Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Accelerating Business Growth Through Interoperability. We're excited you could join us. My name is Jeff Gamma, and I'll be moderating today's event. Now, today, we're going to do a deep dive on how interoperability drives
Vertex, so our products are moving from their legacy statures into cloud-based products. My job is to ensure that the overall operational enterprise is also in position to scale and grow as our products become more available in the SaaS market to our amazing ecosystem of customers that we have. And we have been on a journey for the last 2 years of realizing an operational transformation vision that is really based on this whole conversation today of composable and interoperability on our platforms and solutions. So I'm happy to be here.
Great, thanks. So, Jay, Surya, Ben, thank you so much for joining us today. I really am looking forward to our discussion. So let's get started. All right, first up, some people see the ultimate goal for data and application interoperability as products working together. Is that all it is, or are there more that companies should be taking into consideration? And Surya, why don't you start us off with that one, please?
Yeah, really happy to. And that's a great question, so thanks for asking. What we did, so my role at Accenture, as I described, is partly to kind of conduct research into original areas, answer questions like this. So late last year, what we did was we looked at 4,000 C-suite respondents. We spoke to executives at large companies, conducted one of the largest surveys ever, and then had sort of several other research methods to investigate kind of what is it that they're doing to derive more value out of their existing IT applications. And I would completely agree based on their observations. So definitely getting products connected, right? So having them working together is a noble goal, and it leads to a 5% increase or a 5% premium in revenue. Meaning, if the companies that did not connect their applications were growing at 1%, you with connected applications, connected people, connected processes, could expect to grow, or at least last year we saw those companies grew at 5%. There was almost a 5x difference in their revenue growth. Now, I did say, the products were connected, but that's not all. These companies that were successful, we found, had a few winning traits. So getting products connected is integration, but getting the people behind those products truly understanding, communicating in one language, co-creating, that's what we called interoperability. And this is something that we find sort of rampant with many large companies today. They have hundreds of systems. We found that an average enterprise has over 500 sort of different applications running. And many of them are integrated, meaning, okay, at a face level, the technologies and processes are connected, but they're not connected meaningfully, meaning not in a way that a person sitting in HR, a person sitting in finance, a person sitting in research like myself can meaningfully co-create and build something together. And this is really important. This building this level of interoperability, I think, is really important. And one example that I sort of keep coming back to is a case that I had read in one of the journals in the US. Was that a person was rushed from the ski slopes to the ER, and obviously you want to have a list of things that they're allergic to. And hospital systems are connected. Obviously, this person was not skiing where their base hospital was, and data was sent, and these systems could communicate. But the second system couldn't read meaningfully and derive conclusions out of what was sent out of the first system. So this is a sorry scenario, and this unfolds too often in hospitals. I think the issue is more to do with disparate systems. So definitely interoperability leads to a higher level of performance. It leads to the outcomes that customers have come to expect of any large company these days. So yeah, I think there's a strong demand, there's a strong want for interoperability. We don't want situations where we call up the customer service of a particular company and we keep getting shuffled between different people and departments who, to a customer, feels like they don't talk to each other. I don't think that's acceptable anymore.
Great. Thanks for hitting that one. Okay, so what do companies need to ask, and what should they consider when exploring the possibility of migrating to an interoperable data and software ecosystem? Is this a binary decision? Meaning, is there a place where some data and apps remain siloed, where that makes sense? And Jay, why don't you lead us off on this?
Yeah, sure, Jeff. It's a great question, and it's one that me and my team think about very constantly, as our role is to build products for our Workday customer and partner developer ecosystem to build these type of solutions and interoperate across customers' enterprise landscape. I don't know that it's a binary decision, but the two big things that come to my mind. The first is integrity. So it is very easy to chase a solution or chase the ability to solve something very quickly using the things that are already in front of you. But are you going to be able to build that solution and connect those systems and processes and data in a way that's not going to compromise your business operations as you go forward? A lot of times I can see customers, they'll chase a solution where they're able to get to market or get to their customers or get to their users very quickly, but then they've sacrificed something in the future, whether it's the ability to complete digital transformation initiatives because now they have yet another thing they've introduced into their landscape, or they can't update the software of systems they already have. or they've introduced a cost of maintenance and support that wasn't otherwise there that now is hindering their ability to innovate elsewhere in the business. And so these are all things to think about when you choose where does your data and your applications go. It's both a join of what systems can you build on top of where the data is versus where do you have the tooling to build these types of solutions, and is the data there? And so then once you figure out the answers to those questions, you're figuring out where that solution is going to live. The second piece is security. So customers spend weeks and months. You design the perfect application security. You have all vectors covered, this perfect model. And if you go to build a solution very quickly, sometimes the first thing that can be done is to actually take the data out of that system. And then all of that hard work, all of those security controls and contexts no longer apply to that data, and now it's at risk. And so it's about being intelligent where and how you build these solutions. Ideally, you're building solutions on top of the security and audit constructs you've already built into your enterprise and spent so much time and energy to get right. And you're not building a composable solution that's taking that data elsewhere and then not carrying that context with you. So it's not so much a binary decision overall as to how to just approach across your entire landscape as to whether you should have silos or whether you should be breaking things apart and composing solutions across. It's situation by situation, system by system, data set by data set, making the right and intelligent decisions to try to keep systems sprawl at a minimum, but also make sure that your data is properly secured and you're not introducing unforeseen costs into the business, including maintenance and support or the ability to transform in the way you want to going forward.
Okay, great. I think that takes us kind of into the off-the-shelf solution situation here. So with off-the-shelf solutions for collecting, managing, and analyzing company data, it seems like companies have been able to get a workable option for a long time. But now we're seeing growing interest in composable options. So what's the value in a composable solution, and why should a company consider that route instead? And Ben, I'd like you to start us with this.
Oh, great. Thanks, Jeff. And I loved Jay's answer around the composable aspects. I think another thing that we look at, and we certainly looked at Vertex, was not only a composable solution. So our composable solution at Vertex is we have a core now that's made up of 4 main technologies from a core. And then we have additional solutions that are around that core when they serve a particular form, fit, or function that the core cannot actually handle. So that's super important to us. The other point to Surya's discussion around interoperability, he had a definite thought leadership definition around that. We also look at a little more simple at Vertex, which is what are interoperable solutions up and down a particular value stream or a set of processes that can work. So a single source of truth, but maybe used in multiple areas up and down your stack as we go through that, or your solution. So the way we think about this at Vertex is, if we think about these off-the-shelf solutions as products, or products for the business for a second, what a composable architecture does is that these individual products support a given set of personas or a given set of business processes. They can be improved over time. They can be scaled over time. They can actually be replaced or obsoleted when something else comes along. And you just kind of hold up for a second and think about the value of what we're starting to get into. They provide the ability in some instances to leapfrog your capabilities in a particular area of your business, which is awesome. They also, when we want to change things out, historically in IT, we have to do these long, drawn-out, expensive tear-outs to take something out and put something else new in. They're complex, they're risky, bring up some of the framing around the solution architecture of the security and compliance infrastructure that you have to have. That's gone away, and there's a significant kind of cost associated with that as well. I love the 5% in revenue that we see with companies who do that, but we also look at this composable solution as highly cost effective for the organization. I'm part of our company builds products, they build software just like Workday does. It is important for us as a SaaS company that if you ever take a look at a stock chart for a company like a SaaS company like a Workday, they get that hockey stick revenue that's coming off of there. Well, there's a pretty significant composable, scalable architecture that's sitting behind that company that's allowing that scale to happen operationally as well, right? Make great products that fly off the shelves. You've got to have a cost optimized, highly effective operation that sits on the back end. So, but anyway, the point of being able to take your components, replace your components, improve your components without disrupting the entire enterprise was a super important architectural decision that we made.
And I really want to add to that. So fantastic answer, Ben. I really like the way you put it. And one thing that we've been studying and we found out through this research is that application diversity, as in, the number of moving parts that make up your IT landscape, that has changed dramatically since the last decade, even in the last 3 to 4 years. So we found that an average enterprise, a large average enterprise, has 500 plus applications running. But when we asked the same respondents, the 4,000 CXOs, hey, okay, so you have so many applications. Are they roughly all from the same vendor or, a small handful of vendors? That's not the case. Actually, they are going and acquiring, companies are going and acquiring what they like. If they like a particular solution, but it only does a small thing, okay, they go and acquire that. But they hope that everything works together. Sometimes this doesn't play out. So 8 out of 10 companies told us that they will continue to acquire apps from even more vendors. So they're not worried about that. But what happens in the process is if you don't have a solid integration layer, that's not just point-to-point connections, so that if you take out, like Ben was talking about kind of hot swapping, take out one, put in the other. If you do that and you have point-to-point hardwired connections, then your machine won't work during the time you make that change. So that's what we need, more flexible sort of open integration and really interoperability so that systems understand each other. There is no single point of failure.
Yeah, and sorry, I think that's a great point. And Ben, you mentioned, the idea of being able to leapfrog, your business forward or leapfrog over your competitors. And sorry, you're talking about, companies are seeing that sprawl play out, but it's not stopping their decision to continue to acquire and bring more vendors and solutions into the fold. The pace of the world is just continuing to increase. And so there is no option but to continue to bring best of breed capabilities into your landscape. Where it really comes down to, and you mentioned this, Shri, is the idea of having a solid approach and framework for how you're going to integrate these solutions and applications in. And it means having a very solid integration-based foundation. When I bring a system in, where does that fit? What systems does it need to connect to? How is it secured? How am I making sure all of my controls apply to it? And how am I making sure that when I want to make big moves and transform my company, that it's not getting in the way? Those are all of the major considerations, and the companies that will continue to move the fastest and do this the best will have these frameworks in place to make sure that they can continue to move forward in the future at the same pace they are today.
Okay, so this really leads to interoperability, which is something that all three of you have been mentioning. Shared data is one of the aspects of that. So I'd love to know more about how companies are leveraging that. So related, what does collaboration look like in a shared data environment? And are we talking about different departments more effectively working together, teams working on their own with access to more data, or is this something else? And Jay, you were already on a roll, so why didn't you just keep going?
Thanks, Jeff. It's a great question. So there's two different ways that I think leveraging shared data can look. There's a good way and a not so good way. Ben, you mentioned that you had joined in your new role right around the start of COVID-19. And that was a great example of how the situation required technology just as much as it did working with people. And so it brought, in that example, it brought HR and IT closer together in a way that they never have been before. And what we're finding is that relationship is staying, it's sticking, because as teams continue to work together, they're able to move faster, and you create these force multiplier effects. And the way you get those force multiplier effects is working on a shared data set. So I mentioned there's two ways this can work, the good way and the not so good way. So the good way is that you have those frameworks we've been talking about in place. You have a shared data set. It has applied security controls across the enterprise. Everybody has the same level of visibility, or has the appropriate level of visibility. Everybody's looking at the same source of truth. The not so good way is taking the source of truth data with all the security applied and shoveling it to another system where you're unable to apply those controls, and then putting that data at risk, or worse, creating multiple copies of that same data that different lines of businesses are using to make decisions. So you're able to make decisions more quickly, but actually make more inaccurate decisions. And so this is where a good interoperability strategy is so key. How do I bring the line of businesses together to look at that same source of truth, give them the right tools to do planning, execution, analysis on that data as one cohesive unit as opposed to silos? And how do you do that in such a way that doesn't put your data at risk or prevent your ability to move forward?
No, I love that. And I think, just a step further on that, we also look at from an insight perspective, but where is the data being used in those value chains up and down? Is there a single source that can be used in multiple spots? That's a big thing that we look at, right? Look, Vertex is actually a pretty good example of that, right? So it works all the way up in our order to cash cycle from the front all the way down through the revenue side. It works over in our procurement aspects, but it's one source of data there. It's just got fairly simple, elegant APIs that call out to where they need to call out inside of Workday or inside of our contracting system, our front end contracting system. So, I think that just is an expansive. I think that's an expansive kind of definition of that you can just, this conversation is great because you can just continue to go further and further and further with the concepts.
Yeah, no, I have a couple of examples, and I think what you described, Ben. So I had read about a company, and that featured in our research as well. So makers of these delightful headsets, the Jabra Group, the GN Group, which makes these headsets. And what I found really interesting in their story is they were scaling up demand because everybody was working from home during the COVID pandemic. So about 80% rise in sales. And to meet that, they were transforming. And where they ended up with high level of interoperability. And I found this is probably not even possible for very large companies today. So the guy who picks up the phone and takes an enterprise order, let's say for 10,000 headphones from Accenture, can in real time look into inventory and say, oh, we can do 8,000 of those by Wednesday. But since you might go to another customer, competitor for the rest 2,000, I don't want to make that happen. I'm going to give you a discount on the spot. Because I'm armed with data from so many different systems, I know how much percentage discount I'm allowed to give, how much I can produce, and that leads to a different level of customer satisfaction, right? Which is not achievable with older siloed systems.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that great example. And I have another one. I think with the agility and pace that companies need to operate now, I think the business problems or challenges are operating on another dimension, and it's spanning across the business. So an example is in hospitals, right? So COVID-19 exacerbated what was already an increasing nursing shortage. It's something that's persisting today. And will continue to go forward. And so it becomes not only about survival for a hospital to continue running, but it becomes about differentiating. And so that's a challenge that spans across the entire business. It's not simply a talent or recruiting measure. It's an employee experience measure. It's a financials measure. Figuring out, okay, are we paying nurses the right amount to be competitive? Is the sentiment when they're joining where it needs to be? Are they being upskilled in the right way? Are we providing resources in the right places at the right time? Are we optimizing our spend to make sure that we can go after this? Those are problems that span the entirety of the business. They're not a single siloed decision. So the easier you can work on that shared data set and really figure out what it is that needs to be done and make those intelligent decisions, that's the competitive advantage for you, regardless of what industry you're in.
It's really the whole point. I agree. Okay.
Yep, that's great. Awesome. And all right, so let's shift gears just a little bit. We have to talk about AI and ML. It feels like these are mandatory terms for practically every platform and product right now. And I'm not kidding. I actually saw an ad a few days ago for a toaster that claims to use AI to make the perfect slice of toast. That's how crazy the whole everything has to have AI has gotten. But what I want to know is, how are these technologies being used for business application and data interoperability that goes beyond just mere marketing terms? And Surya, I'd love to get your insights on this.
Yeah, no, I love that example about the toaster, and it's not the first time, right? When new technologies sort of burst into the market, you see a lot of spurious use cases. We always had sort of one of the use cases for intelligent refrigerators and Wi-Fi connected everything, even when things clearly don't need to. There's no way that you would operate a heavy machine from a distance. These things happen. So, okay, a lot of terms get media attention, perhaps get over-mentioned. But I do believe we are entering a golden age of AI. There was this AI winter, and with the advent of generative AI, I myself am a heavy user, and in Accenture, we have completely kind of gone on an overdrive. We are looking at multiple areas. We are trying out different things in a safe sort of way to test how generative AI can help us, augment us to work better. The way that these products, that generative AI and traditional AI, can reinvent business, I believe is real, and I think Accenture at this point of time does. What's interesting is we did a recent sort of new research study to look at the impact of generative AI. What we did was, so the Board of Labor Statistics in the US, they published data on almost 400 job categories. So we looked at about 200, 250 of them manually first, hand by hand, and looked at what are some tasks that can be impacted by generative AI. And what we found at the end of it, and then we cleverly automated it, but what we found was 40% of all working hours can be impacted by generative AI. Now that's massive. And this varies across industries, but if you think about 40%, but those 40% hours, they are helping us kind of, giving back time in the day. It's almost like 2.5, 3 hours of your day given back for you to focus on more productive things that bring more value. So I'm a technologist, so I am for this, for example. But I do believe that there is a lever. So it's viral right now, generative AI and applications of generative AI. That's viral. But there are traditional use cases. For example, the price of sequencing an individual human genome, that has dropped from about 100 million in 2001 to under $500 today. So we can do incredible things that were not possible before. But to get from that virality to value, what we need to do, and no surprise, this is the interoperability discussion, but what we find is interoperability is increasingly becoming more important. It's great to experiment with ChatGPT and all of its avatars. But when you want it to create real value, or you think about Microsoft Copilot, there's tons of other solutions. If you want it to create real value, you have to feed it enterprise data. It has to be done in a secure manner. And the moment you do that, you have interoperability. And if you're already an interoperable enterprise, you will probably have an easier time deriving value out of new advancements like generative AI.
Yeah, sir, it's a great point, and I think that there's certainly a lot of hype around AI/ML right now. It started on the consumer side. It's certainly applicable on the enterprise side. Workday, for example, has been doing AI/ML for years. We've been embedding it fundamentally into our applications like Workday Skills Cloud to help companies upskill their workforce, and our financial side to detect anomalies and improve, time to close books. And certainly you mentioned the automation aspect of making people faster. I think a couple things from our side, is the first is that there's certainly a productivity impact of AI/ML, but there's also the ability to make better, more informed business decisions. And I think that's really the critical piece in the enterprise kind of area is not only can AI/ML, when well applied, make you faster and make you able to do more things, but it also can cut through the mountains of data that you have and help you make an intelligent decision. And that can't happen without good data. So AI/ML, the reason it's taking off, computers are really good at doing math. The technology has made it so it can do math very, 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 very quickly, right? So it can sit there and crunch on this data and make decisions, but it's a garbage in, garbage out concept, just like it always has been with data. If the data is bad, you're going to get a bad decision. And this becomes even more amplified actually with AI/ML when you're doing it at such a scale that people are going to talk about. And I think for someone like Ben, as a customer wanting to use AI/ML, there's probably two dimensions to think about it. The first is the software that I have and the vendors and partners that I work with. There's an expectation that AI and ML capabilities are being brought to the table fundamentally in the software that I have, and you're going to see that companies like Workday already have it. Others will be bringing it in very, very quickly, and everybody will continue to move very fast. Then the second layer is how can a company fundamentally build AI/ML on top of the solutions they're building on top of their software, right? So you're going to see a move into how can I create bespoke solutions using AI/ML capabilities. And again, it all comes back to it's not going to be possible to do it right without having a good interoperability strategy that has your data properly secured and accessible across the business.
Jane, for sure. And we're living both right now. We're living in both because we've recently gone live with Workday in the company in both finance and over in our human capital side. And I will tell you that the embedded machine learning and AI, that is my term for all of it right now, is helpful. I mean, it is amazing how actually helpful it is to have something checking your work and saying, hey, this doesn't look quite right. Is this quite right? And it happens like all the time. Like that's just a helpful thing. It's like making a perfect piece of toast. I don't have to worry about that, right? So I'll take the helpfulness of it right now. I think the other big area, like you said, on the part B, the software that we make is determining has to be it has to be accurate. It's got to be 100% accurate. We're not in the business of we can be kind of accurate, right? Because we're talking about tax calculations, and there's a lot of consequences of not being accurate. So we have a lot. Our smartest are focused on accuracy of our data inside of our products. But we have to pour through a lot of information in order to get to this point of accuracy. So when we take the other side with generative AI, but more machine learning and AI, et cetera, we that first use case helpful, we do wade through mountains of data now, and we just get the important right to our tax professionals in the business, and that is saving us. It's not only saving us money; it's making our product more reliable, even more reliable, because there's so much that noise is taken out. So both of those use cases are, we're seeing and living and dreaming right now. We're just starting to get into our own. Well, we'll talk about the generative AI for a moment. So we're releasing internally at the moment generative AI behind our firewall. So working through the security, working through the privacy of it all, but we have our own internal algorithm that is based on ChatGPT that runs in our organization. But we're really looking at use cases to put our own internal data on that, right? but again, hopeful use cases right now. And yeah, sure. How many days of vacation do I have left? Like, why do I have to go look at something? I'm just going to ask our generative AI librarian bot that we have, and and she'll be glad to tell me. But even from, okay, what does my demand look like coming into my IT department right now? What capabilities do I need to have over the next quarter, 6 months to deliver all of this demand? If you understand what I currently have in terms of skills and capabilities, you're certainly going to be able to help me understand what I'm going to need over a period of time, so I can flex my workforce up and flex my workforce down. Now we're really starting to get to business, right? That's a lot of the promise I see of that stuff inside. I love this conversation. I could do this one all day.
Yeah, and thanks for hitting all those different aspects. That was great. All right, so are companies that currently rely on siloed data and software systems operating at a significant disadvantage to those with integrated platforms? And also, if they start transitioning to a more interoperable system now, are they too late to the game? And Surya, I'd love to come back to you to get your thoughts on this one.
Yes and no. Yes to the first part. There's significant advantage, like Ben's pointed out, Jay's pointed out earlier. I think it's just table stakes at this point of time. You need to be interoperable. You need to, and it's a continuous journey. You have 300 systems today. They look like this. Well, guess what? Blink, and those 300 out of them, 250 are different, and you have an additional 100 more. So the integration platform you had and all the complexity you were managing, guess what? That doubled. But if you could actually bet on that journey, the biggest finding that came out of my research was a 5 percentage point increased revenue growth. You could call it 6x, because we found companies growing at 1% and 6%, so 5 extra percentage points. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you actually crunch the numbers, so what I did was I took two companies, $10 billion each, right, an hypothetical exercise, roll out 1% revenue growth and 6% revenue growth for 5 years. What you come up with is an $8.2 billion revenue growth, a revenue difference in 5 years, cumulative. So you start at 10, and one company was $8.2 billion ahead of another company. So that's almost adding another company to it, an extra company, almost, right? 80% of its original company to it. So yeah, that's just revenue. But what was interesting, and those numbers might change slightly based on the year. But what really interested me was, okay, you pick up any other metric. We tested multiple metrics here. You pick up any other metric, for example, sustainability, right? That's big in Europe. I'm from London, and there's a lot of net zero push going on in here. Scope 3 emissions, right? How are you going to understand how much emissions come out of your partners, your suppliers, and things that are not directly done by you? When you can't even, most companies, and we had this wonderful interview with a CXO who told us, even something simple like, how much electricity do all my sites spread across the US consume? That simple of a question, it's very difficult to get a consistent answer to that, just because there's just too much to measure, and all of that sort of disparity. So in summary, yes, you need to have interoperability. It improves revenue, top line, that is the biggest one. But if you look at any subsequent sort of shorter or different goals, we call them Value 360 in Accenture, that covers kind of different areas of your both financial and non-financial outcomes. We found that having interoperability definitely helps. Are you too late today? No, because it's a continuous journey. Companies that think they are ahead and will always be ahead will fall behind. This is a journey you need to make continuously, but the end result is definitely worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I think on this one, just on this one, I would say never say never. would definitely encourage to get on with it. Certainly in in our industry, interoperability composable solution was our only option given where we were going. So we recently, new public company, COVID had hit. Scaling our company because our products are now fundamentally built in the cloud, and that's how we're going to market with our customers, and this stuff is flying off the shelves literally. This was our only approach that we could really take because we're a relatively small company as well, right? So we want to keep our costs optimized, our staff kind of optimized. We are doing more in the benefits cases there. I'm just going to say that I think if you just take some time and think about your benefits case, what you're going to have, and if funding is tough or if the idea is a little tough, then do it component by component and prove it out on your way, and ensure that you have a funding stream that says, well, if we do well with this, let's take what we put into that and put into the next piece and work it that way. So there's definitely ways to pull it off, but for me, it was the business case that we had around ours was quite compelling.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ben. And one of the questions, so I agree, Surya, it's table stakes. What I've found is a lot of customers sometimes aren't sure where they stand. So, the way I look at it is judge your reaction to being able to do these three things, right? So the first is, can you differentiate from your peers, from your peer companies when you need to fast? And do you believe you can do it faster than they can, right? Can you create competitive advantage on top of the technology and interoperability strategy that you have, or would you spend more time building the foundation in order to then differentiate? The second is, the pace of the world is not slowing down. It's only going to increase. So as you learn new inputs and you're reacting to things, we all are reacting to things we've never seen before at a pace we've never dealt with. Do you believe you have the ability to move quickly through that, or are you still playing catch up? And then the third is, do you see opportunities to continue to smush your footprint, right? So sometimes more systems isn't better. It's all about capabilities. Are you getting everything you can? Do you believe you're getting everything you can out of the vendors and partners and systems that you have? And are you in a position to take the most advantage and create the most value out of those systems, or are you constantly grabbing for additional pieces to bring in? If you go through those 3 points, I think you'll feel pretty confident in where you probably are on that scale. And again, it is never too late to go at this, and it all starts at the fundamentals. Do you have your data secure? Do you have your trusted systems, vendors, and partners in place so that you can move at the pace of the world? And if you don't, it's probably time to start.
Yeah, no, just coming back to that as well. I think the one thing that perhaps we forgot to mention, we talked a lot about technology, and we also asked these CXOs about the culture, right? So once you get all this lovely technology working together, the interoperability, but there is a group of companies that are still trying to crack kind of the secret sauce or discover the secret sauce around that. That's really important. So yes, you can share data. I make it happen technologically. Great. But after that, you have to understand that in many sort of traditional enterprises, data was what you had to create value. And suddenly now you're living in this world where everything is exposed, right? At least at the right levels with the right security. But immediately someone can see, okay, the bottleneck is in this process. This shouldn't take this long. Let's get to the root cause analysis. Bam, it's done, right? So you have to prepare yourself to kind of thrive in that world. You have to give employees kind of that hope that if you share data, we're actually going to improve outcomes for everybody. This is not an exercise in which we are looking to penalize a few who are slower. It's about bringing the whole, it's a team sport, right? So getting all those structures in place, getting the people working together once they have the capability to share data and abilities, and getting them to co-create, that's really important as well. And that's what many companies, like Starbucks does this. They bring in their partners, the non-technical partners. Capital One Bank does this, and they try to kind of get everyone together to have a hackathon of sorts co-create together, build something where people from different functions are actually contributing.
That's great. And now, before we move on to some audience Q&A, Ben, you've been touching a little bit about your real-world experiences making all this come together. I'd like to go a little bit deeper into that. So would you mind sharing your real-world experience here?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Jeff. Just a little bit. And I think this real world experience, it's great to be on with Workday and with Accenture, because it was this partnership with Workday and Accenture that sits at the heart of this. And I've always believed that if you pick the right partners, you can do great things with great partners, period. And I just believe that in my heart. And so it was kind of natural that we all came together through this. But when I walked in the door in 2020 to Vertex, it was literally a month before COVID came upon us. It was also when I walked in the door, one of my interview questions, I asked our CEO, are we going public? And I was told directly, no, we are not. On my first day, the CEO called me down and said, Ben, we're going public in a month. So now I'm getting ready to go public. Now, and then 30 days later, it is pandemic time. So we bug out of the company in less than 24 hours. We are a remote global workforce. When I looked around at what was in front of us, it was important to know that we really didn't have well-defined business processes. We had a lot of systems. We didn't have a lot of well-defined integration between those systems. And we were moving out, like we were going fast and we were starting to scale and grow. So my big idea was to simply fix everything at once. And I had this wild vision of this amazing core of solution made up of amazing technology, seamlessly talking to one another from a composable architecture. And for us, that was going to be the fastest path to enabling our growth that we were going to need to have, the scale that we were going to need to have to support our growth. Many discussions with our internal leadership team, and many times of helping people to get off the floor, but they started to really comprehend it quickly, understand the business case that was behind it. While most everyone kind of looked at it and said, Ben, that is just the wildest idea. You know, we trust you. Not sure, but we trust you. Our COO just stood right up and said, I'm all in. And so he became the champ on that. The initial reaction outside when we were starting to talk to partners was, you want to do what with Workday and what and with what and what? That's a wild idea. No way you're going to pull that off. And the funny thing was, as soon as I met Workday and I met Accenture, their initial reaction was, that's a wild idea. We're all in. When do we get started? And we really looked at it and that's where this partnership began with Vertex and Workday and us. And we just had this vision of this composable, highly, you know, I love the word elegant. I mean, elegantly integrated solutions with Workday, with Salesforce, with DocuSign, with these other Vertex solutions coming together just to build this completely interoperable, composable, highly scalable solution. So I think the main thing just for the audience is we took a lot of time on getting the business solution and integration architecture right. We spent a lot of time really understanding we developed value streams, understood what was important to our customers and our employees, and we built a solid solution architecture around that. We didn't do it in small fashion. We took the whole thing on at once, and we did do a very large implementation of all of it, but we were in such a state and had to move so fast. That was the right approach for us. We really couldn't take the time to do it over a long period of time. So we did that. But hey, 2 years, just shy of 2 years, we're complete. We made some scope adjustments along the way, and it was there was a lot of adversity through that program, but it was just a consistent team effort. Small wins turned into big ones. A lot of belief from our leadership teams, from our partners and our employees and our team specifically to get us through that. I would say at the heart of that solution is Workday. The heart of that solution is Workday on our certainly our back office and middle office, and then Salesforce on our front and middle office where those converge. DocuSign is within that, and Vertex is within that, is super interoperable solutions that have to be there to make that whole thing work. But I mean, I think just a quick thing. When we started the program, when I joined, our data quality, our enterprise data quality in the company was at about 50%, and I'm not kidding. It was probably at 50%. People would do their work in their systems, but they would really do all their analysis over in a spreadsheet and pull multiple sources together, and it was definitely a data rodeo every day for folks. We're at 98% right now in a completely integrated end-to-end system. Now you have to care and feed for that data to keep it highly reliable. We understand the new muscle that's associated with that. I think something else that I'll give to folks, it's just a simple example, but it's one of the, but if you go to scale on it, prior to us making this type of change, every contract, it didn't matter how big or small of a customer you were, was manually processed in our system and manually priced. So we would manually price you and manually have a contract. Every contract was redlined by not a very large legal team. Now everything is systemically priced, once and accurate, and all of our contracts there is zero redlining. They're all just automated contracts through our contracting of Salesforce into our billing of Workday, and there is no legal intervention unless it's a significantly sized deal or something like that. So those are a couple parts of our journey. It's been we've gone live recently. We're going through. We've been through closes. We've gone through our quarter close. We're really happy with the decisions that we've made, and we can really know that we're gonna hit our stride here pretty soon, and we're gonna be able to scale for the future as we're growing globally like wildfire right now. So yeah, but but crediting Workday and Accenture and Salesforce and some of the other partners that we have had through this, it was a big team effort, and it really we went big, but we had big partners around us. So it's been a journey for sure.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And Jay, Surya, Ben, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights. We are getting close on time, so I want to shift over to audience questions. So let's just jump right in. And Surya, the first question we have, I think is a good fit for you. There's a resistance in our company to moving to more interoperability because some people see it as a don't fix what isn't broken kind of problem. Is it possible to start on a small scale to show the value and get buy-in?
Yeah, this is exactly what I think Ben was just referring to, right? You could, I think Ben, again, also, there are places where you could replace everything. Not every organization can afford or even want to do so. But what he alluded to was actually a lot of planning that went beforehand. So in a way, he was getting approvals for the small stages, building up to the big moment, right? But in general, that's what we advise companies, and that's been sort of the advice since the ERP age. Don't big bang it. Go in stages, find value. And again, something that we talked about earlier as well, systems, technologies, they can be changed overnight if you have the right tools and the right partners in place. People, it takes a little bit of time, right? So to build that culture of sharing, of collaboration, to make employees feel safe that, okay, sharing everything and operating in a world where there's literally all the companies sitting in a virtual room and just working with each other. To get used to that environment might take a little bit of time, but every organization needs to progress at a pace they are comfortable with.
Great, thanks for taking that question. Jay, this next question, I think this one's good for you. What should we be doing today to make the process easier when our company is ready to transition out of the siloed systems we use right now?
Yeah, it's a great question, and certainly Surya's advice to around building those small wins and collecting those is certainly a tactic. I think maybe I'll answer it in a way if you're kind of ready to go in on this, but you don't quite know how. Ben was very bold. He talked about, how he approached this, right? He had a vision on the table that says, I'm going to align on the small set of trusted systems and partners, and we're going to transform the way we do this, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to build that solid foundation of systems that we trust, that, work well together. You mentioned, Workday, Salesforce, DocuSign, those are all products that interoperate very well together, right? But also they're systems that provide the right tooling for you to compose on top of. So you're not just continuing to introduce sprawl and creating a situation that prevents your ability from moving fast. But they're also adaptable in such a way that you can bring in best of breed capabilities and systems specific to your business or your industry as you need to. So they have that combination of that flexibility and the tooling to really make them do more and create these force multiplier effects across the enterprise. So for companies looking to do this, I very much recommend heed Ben's strategy of coming in and having that down on paper to say, these are the systems, these are the partners we trust, and we're going to lay that foundation, that very solid foundation, and then we'll be able to build upon that for years and years to come. And that's how I would approach, for a customer that's thinking about, going to do this, it's certainly the way to do it.
Great, thanks. And I think we have time for one more question. So Ben, I'm giving this one to you. Our company already has interoperable apps and data. Is there a way our managers and team leaders can take advantage of that to help make sure their direct reports are in the roles that suit their skills and knowledge the best?
Okay, Jeff, thanks. That's a great question from the audience. So here's how I think about that. If you already have composable solutions and interoperable data in your enterprise, then you've seen it. You see it. When it comes in terms of where we're going to go next and capabilities and skills that our team needs to have with that, then what I would say is see farther. And what does farther really mean to me? When you have a strong core of interoperable systems, single sources of truth, high data reliability, day in and day out, where we're going next is automation, continuing to automate these processes, continuing to build that scale into those processes, right? Get that stuff built out, because I'm wishing for everybody that we're all on a hockey stick, right? So as the scale and growth is coming, right, automate more and more and more. That's going to, and while that's happening, so that's a big capability for the team members need to have. I actually have we call it automation process excellence inside of Vertex. We have a team that's specifically dedicated around this that does that. But now we're also flip back over to our generative AI and machine learning. That's your next area of skill, because your foundation now is so good. Your data is so good, right? You're like, well, now what are you waiting for now, right? You have what you need. You're not going to sit there and go through, well, I don't have all the pieces that I need, right? No, you have all the pieces now. So, I mean, my two main areas that I would focus on if I was in that situation, which is where we are focusing on, is scaled business process automation, helpfulness, advanced helpfulness with generative AI and AI machine learning around that. We'll get into process mining. We'll get into all that stuff, because once the data is that good, then you have the opportunities to take advantage of that stuff. So that's how I would answer that for the audience.
Awesome. Thank you for taking that question. With that is all the time we have today. So I'd like to thank all three of you, Jay, Surya, and Ben, for a great discussion today. We really appreciate you sharing your insights and all of your expertise with us. I'd also like to thank our audience for joining us today. If we didn't get to your question, we'll follow up with an email answer. And you'll also get, for today's webinar, a link for the recording so you can review it at any time you like, or share it with your colleagues. So thanks for watching, and we hope you join us again soon. Have a great day.